Today we are going to learn about the epithelial tissue. The word tissue is derived from the French word tissue, meaning weave or texture. The term tissue means a group of cells together with the intercellular substance performing a common function. Now, what causes cells to form tissues? Now, cells outside the cell membrane, it has a cell coat which is glycoprotein in nature and rich in sialic acid. Now, this sialic acid, it helps in attraction between the cells. Now, the cells are attached to each other by means of the junctional complexes. It is seen that malignant cells, they have this property of rapid dissemination. This is because in these cells, the concentration of sialic acid in the cell coat is diminished. Now, regarding the surface of the epithelium, it has an apical surface, that is the free surface. It has the lateral surface, where the two cells are joining together, and it has a basal surface, where the base of the cell is sitting on the basement membrane. So, the lateral surfaces of the two cells, they are joined by means of the junctional complexes, and these junctional complexes are the zona occludens, zona adherens, we have the desmosome, and the basal part of the cells are connected to the basement membrane by means of the hemidesmosome. Now, there are four basic types of tissues: the epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue, and the nervous tissue. The epithelial tissue, it forms the lining of the organs. It is basically for protection. The connective tissue, it connects other tissues together. The muscular tissue is for contraction, and the nervous tissue is for nerve impulse conduction. So, what is the epithelium? The surface of the body and the inner surface of the hollow tubular structures within the body are covered by a layer of cells which rests on the basement membrane. Now, this covering layer is known as the epithelium. So, this epithelium is one of the basic tissues of the body, which consists of tightly adherent cells, which are known as the epithelial cells. So, what are the characteristics of the epithelial tissue? Number one, these cells are closely packed together, that is, the intercellular substance is reduced to a minimum. The cells rest on the basement membrane. The epithelial tissue is avascular, that it has no blood supply. So how does it derive its nutrition? It derives its nutrition from the nearest capillaries, and it has a rich nerve supply. Also, these cells undergo rapid destruction and replacement. This is known as the rapid cell turnover. And the epithelial tissue is derived from all the three germ layers. Thus, that is the epidermis of the skin, it is ectodermal in origin. The lining epithelium of the digestive and the respiratory tracts, it is endodermal. And the lining epithelium of the vascular system, the mesothelium, which lines the body cavities, these are mesodermal in origin. Now come to the functions of the epithelium. Number one function is protection and barrier. Now, this epithelium, since it covers the external and internal surfaces of the body, therefore it protects from external injury. Also, it protects the body from microorganisms. Next, absorption. It helps in the absorption of water and digested food from the intestine. It also serves the function of secretion, just like in case of the different glands, like the goblet cells of the alimentary and respiratory tracts, etc. So it helps in secretion. Next, selective permeability, such as in case of the lungs. It allows gaseous exchange between the alveolar air and the blood in the pulmonary capillaries. It can serve sensory function. It also serves an important function in excretion, that is the epithelial cells of the sweat glands which secrete sweat. And last but not the least, it is lubrication, as seen in the serous cavities. In between, there is a thin layer of capillary fluid between the parietal and the visceral layers. This helps in lubrication and prevents the separation of the layers. So we can classify epithelial tissue according to its function, like a surface or lining epithelium, which helps in protection and absorption, glandular epithelium for secretion, neuroepithelium for sensory function, and myoepithelium for contraction. But the most important classification of the epithelial tissue is according to the number of layers present and the shape of the cells. So according to the number of layers, so we have simple epithelium and compound epithelium. Simple epithelium when there is only a single layer of cells resting on the basement membrane. Compound epithelium is when there are more than one layer of cells resting on the basement membrane. So this is simple epithelium, a single layer of cells resting on the basement membrane, and this is a compound epithelium where we have multiple layers of cells. Next is according to the shape of the cells. It may be a squamous, that is flat type, squamous epithelium, or it may be cuboidal epithelium where the cells they look cube shaped, or it may be columnar epithelium where the cells of the epithelium they look like columns. So simple epithelium, it consists of a single layer of cells resting on the basement membrane. Stratified or compound epithelium, more than one layer of cells, and there is another variety that is pseudostratified. Basically, pseudostratified is also a type of simple epithelium. Here, all the cells they rest on the basement membrane, but the cells are of different heights. So, as a result, all the cells do not reach up to the free surface. So since the cells are of different heights, the nucleus of the cells, they are at different levels. This gives a sense of false stratification. Hence, it is also known as pseudo-stratified variety. So this is the classification of the epithelial tissue. It may be simple epithelium consisting of a single layer of cells and compound epithelium consisting of more than one layer of cells resting on the basement membrane. Simple epithelium can further be classified as the squamous variety, the cuboidal epithelium, columnar epithelium, or the pseudostratified epithelium. Compound epithelium can be further classified as the stratified epithelium and the transitional epithelium. So this is a picture showing the different types of epithelium. This is simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar, and we have the stratified type. We shall now discuss the different varieties in details. The first is the simple squamous epithelium. Simple squamous epithelium, it is also known as the pavement epithelium. These cells, they are flat and they have irregular outlines, just like a puzzle. So the edges of the puzzle or the edges of the cells, they fit into each other and form a thin layer. Now, if we see a vertical section through the cells, we will find that the cells are very much flattened. Only the cytoplasm is spread out in a thin fashion, and only the nucleus, in the region of the nucleus, the cells, they bulge. And the cells are connected by means of tight junctions, and nothing can, and if anything has to pass through the cells, it has to pass, it cannot pass in between the cells, it has to pass through the cells. And this epithelium, therefore, is very well adapted to perform a dialyzing or a filtering function. So where do you find this type of epithelium? Its most important area is the lining of the lung alveoli. Next, also, it is found in the loop of Henle. It forms the lining of the serous cavity, where it is known as the mesothelium. It is forming the lining of the heart, where it is known as endocardium. It also forms the lining of the blood vessels and lymph vessels, where it is known as the endothelium. So what are the functions of the simple squamous epithelium? It is filtration, diffusion, transport, secretion, and also helps to reduce friction. So this is a slide showing the mesothelium, the mesothelial lining of the peritoneal cavity. And we can see we have the simple squamous epithelium, and where these are small bulgings are present, where the nuclei are present. Next is the simple cuboidal epithelium. You can see from the flattened cells, now the cells have gradually attained some height and the cells are cube-like. So it is known as the simple cuboidal epithelium. And we find this type of epithelium in the thyroid follicles and also in the kidney tubules. So their function is secretion and absorption. So this is a slide of the thyroid gland. Under low magnification, we can see these are the thyroid follicles, and they are lined by the cuboidal epithelium. We can make out the rounded nuclei lining the follicles. Next is the simple columnar epithelium. From the cuboidal epithelium, gradually the height of the cells, it has increased. So the height is more than the breadth. Now the cells are resting on the basement membrane and the nuclei are oval in shape. Now this columnar epithelium, it has a very important function of absorption. So it helps in the absorption of nutrients in the GI tract. So it is present in the stomach, the intestine, and another important function of the columnar cells is secretion of mucus. This is a histological appearance of the stomach. You can see the columnar epithelial lining. You can make out the oval nuclei of the cells. Now, the columnar epithelium can further be classified according to some modifications which are present on the free surface of the cells. So, these modifications, it may be the presence of cilia or it may be the presence of the microvilli. Another type of modified cell is the goblet cells. Now, the goblet cells are special types of cells which are filled with the mucinoidal granules. So this is a H&E stain showing in the goblet cells, but these cells, goblet cells, do not take the H&E stain because the mucinogen granules, they get dissolved during tissue preparation. So in under the H&E stain, these cells, they appear to be empty. So these goblet cells, a very important function of these goblet cells is the production of mucus. And this mucus, it has a lot of functions, like it prevents the digestion of the GI tract by the enzymes. And in case of the large gut, it lubricates the wall for the passage of the feces. And in the respiratory tract, it helps to trap the foreign bodies and the bacteria. So this is a picture of the goblet cell. This is the appearance of the lining of the small intestine with H&E staining, and you can see the empty appearance of the goblet cells. Next is surface modification is the microvilli. What are microvilli? These are finger-like projections of the cytoplasm of the cell seen in the apical part of the cell. So these microvilli help to increase the surface area of absorption of the cells, and it is present in the small and the large intestine where it helps in to absorb the nutrients. The another modification is the presence of cilia. Now, the cilia are highly motile cylindrical structures on the apical surface of the cells, and the cilia are capable of movement. So, all the cilia, they move in a coordinated fashion to propel a fluid or a mucus in one direction over the epithelial surface. Now, each cell, it possesses about 270 cilia. So where do we find the ciliated epithelium? It is found in the respiratory epithelium, in the fallopian tube. So this is a picture showing the cilia. This is the cilia consisting of the microtubules. So this is the ciliated columnar epithelium. The cilia, it has the arrangement here, the arrangement of microtubules. 2 microtubules are present in the center and 9 microtubules are present in the periphery. And the cilia, they beat regularly in a regular fashion and helps the transport of cells or other foreign bodies, such as in case of the lungs. The cilia rid the air passages of the particulate matter and mucus. In the oviduct, that is the fallopian tube, the cilia helps to move the eggs from the uterine tube into the uterus. And in case of the testes, it helps to move the mature sperm into the epididymis. Now, what is mucociliary barrier? The goblet cells in the respiratory tract, they produce mucus, and in this mucus, the sticky mucus, the bacteria and the foreign particles, they get stuck, they get trapped. And when the cilia move, they help to broom the sticky material towards the larger air passages, which now incites a cough reflex or the sneezing reflex, and the matter of the bacteria or the foreign particles are thus expelled out of the body. That is mucociliary barrier. Now, what is the difference between microvilli and cilia? Microvilli, it is non-motile. Cilia, on the other hand, is motile. The central core of microvilli, it consists of microfilaments. In case of cilia, it is microtubules. Function of microvilli is absorption. In case of cilia, it helps in the transport of particles in a particular direction. Microvilli, since it is important for absorption, therefore it is found in the intestinal epithelium, in the PCT of the kidney tubules, and the cilia, because it helps in transport, so it is present in it is found in the respiratory tract and in case of and also in the uterine tube or the fallopian tube. Now, another type of cell modification is the stereocilia. Now, the stereocilia, unlike cilia, it is non-motile. and it has certain similarities, but actually these stereocilia, it has similarity to the microvilli because it contains actin filaments. And stereocilia, it helps to increase the surface area of absorption. So it is found in the epididymis. Also, we have find it in the ventricles of the brain and the central canal of the spinal cord. So this is a picture showing the different modifications. This is a microvilli, which is present in the small intestine. This is the stereocilia, which is present in the epididymis. And this is the cilia, which is present in the respiratory tract. So this slide is showing the three different types of simple epithelium: simple squamous variety, simple cuboidal variety, and the simple columnar variety, with the examples and the type of nucleus we see. Next is the pseudostratified columnar epithelium, which is a variant of the simple epithelium. Here we already have discussed the cells are of different heights, but all the cells they rest on the common basement membrane. It may be so that the smaller cells, they act as precursor for the taller cells. And because of the different heights, difference in the location of the nuclei, so it gives a sense of false stratification. So it is known as pseudo-stratified ciliated columnar epithelium, which is found in the mucosa of the nasal cavity, the trachea, and the bronchi. Now we are going to shift to the compound epithelium. Compound epithelium, we have already discussed. We have two varieties. One is the stratified, the other is the transitional epithelium. Stratified epithelium is of two types. One is the stratified squamous, stratified columnar. Stratified squamous epithelium is important. Over here we have to know the keratinized, and the other is the non-keratinized varieties. So compound epithelium, what is compound epithelium? Which consists of two or more layers of cells. And this compound epithelium will be classified, the name will be classified as the shape of the cells at the topmost layer. So if the shape of the cells at the topmost layer is squamous variety, flattened variety, it is known as the stratified squamous epithelium. And if the topmost cells are cuboidal or columnar variety, it will be named accordingly. Now, compound epithelium is basically designed for protection because it is multiple layered. So, next we come to the stratified squamous epithelium. Now, stratified squamous epithelium, there are several layers of cells, and the deepest layer of cells is columnar. The intermediate cells are polyhedral and the superficial cells are flattened. We have two varieties. One is non-keratinized and the other is keratinized. So this is the stratified non-keratinized squamous epithelium. We can see it is found in the oral cavity, the lining of the tongue. We can see that the superficial layers are of the squamous variety. So it is the stratified non-keratinized squamous epithelium. So it is basically here the superficial cells, they remain alive and it is non-keratinized. This surface is always moist and wet. So this type of epithelium is found in the tongue, mouth, pharynx, esophagus, the lower part of the anal canal, the vagina, and the cornea. The next variety is the stratified keratinized squamous epithelium. It is here, this type of epithelium, the most important example is that of the epidermis of the skin. Here the superficial surface, it is dry. So over here, these cells, they contain a substance which is known as keratin. It is non-living and it forms a sort of covering over the epithelium. Now the transitional epithelium, the next variety of the compound epithelium, this is a very important type of epithelium, which usually consists of 5 to 6 layers thick. Now, the most differentiating feature from the stratified squamous epithelium is that here in transitional epithelium, which is also known as the urothelium, as it is found in the lining of the urinary tract. So here in the topmost cells, we find that the cells are larger in size. They have abundant cytoplasm and sometimes they may be binucleated. So these large cells are also known as the umbrella cells. Now, it is seen but in case of stratified, the squamous variety, what do you find? That in the topmost layer are flattened. So this is the most important differentiating features from the between transitional epithelium and the stratified squamous epithelium. Now these cells are connected by means of tight junctions. We can see that the lowermost cells over here are smaller, the middle cells are polyhedral, and the topmost cells are large and rounded. And this type of epithelium is found in the renal calyx, in the pelvis of the ureter and the ureter itself, and the urinary bladder. So these cells, when these are actually, this type of epithelium is found in the hollow viscous, which are going to undergo a lot of stretch. So these cells, when the bladder is empty, the number of cell layers is about 5 to 6 layers thick. But when the bladder is stretched because of a large amount of urine inside it, the layer will thin out and become 2 to 3 layer thick. These topmost layers, then the cells, they rearrange themselves so that the layers become thinner, and also another important feature is that these topmost layers, this cell is very impervious. It does not allow the toxic urine to come in contact with the body tissue. So this is an explanation where it is found, and where it is also known as the urothelium. You can see that the superficial cells are large and polyhedral, and also known as the umbrella cells because they can stretch out. The intermediate cells are pear-shaped. The deeper cells are small. So here this slide is showing the number of cell layers, the types of cells. Now, highlights of what we have learned today. First is that the classification is based on the number of cells and the cell morphology. That is the shape of the cells. Now, the basement membrane, it separates the epithelium from the underlying connective tissue. All the epithelium, it is avascular. The surface modification includes cilia, the microvilli, and the stereocilia. And the lateral surface modifications includes the, as we have discussed, the cell junction. Now, applied anatomy of the epithelial tissue. Now, this epithelial tissue may undergo carcinomatous changes. So, malignant tumor arising from the epithelium is known as carcinoma. And if the tumor arises from the squamous epithelium, it is known as squamous cell carcinoma. Now, squamous cell carcinoma is a very important carcinoma which is seen in case of lung cancer. And it is seen in case of, especially in those people who are smokers. And if the tumor arises from glandular tissue, it is known as the adenoma. Another important applied aspect is that of the immotile cilia syndrome, also known as the Kartagener'S syndrome. It is an autosomal recessive genetic disorder which interferes with the synthesis of the ciliary proteins. The cilia here are non-motile. As a result, it cannot perform its function of mucociliary clearance. Therefore, the people with this syndrome have repeated chest infections. Also, men and women will suffer from infertility as the ova will not be transported to the uterus, the sperms will be immotile. And these people also suffer from various congenital abnormalities like situs inversus, where all the organs have a mirror image transposition in the body. So here we can see there is situs inversus, there is sinusitis bronchiectasis. Here we can see that the mucus, which has secreted from the goblet cells, in normal airways, the mucus, it traps the dust particles and it is broomed away by the movement of the cilia. But in patients with Kartagener's, what will happen? The cilia are non-motile. As a result, the mucus, it builds up, and here there is a bacterial infection and inflammation. With this, we would like to end our discussion on the epithelial tissue. Thank you for joining.